we have a fella named Two Count Kyle over on Ad Free Shows, and he's very, very complimentary of your work with the Blackpool Combat Club, but wants to know what your thoughts are on comedy wrestlers such as Danhausen and Orange Cassidy. Would you like to work with those uh, type of guys or those guys in particular in some capacity at some point?
Well, me personally, I wouldn't have any problem with that at all. I'm very comfortable with myself as a performer, and I've worked with comedy wrestlers since I was a teenager. If you look at my career, a lot of it was being put on with comedy wrestlers or entertaining situations. So I have no problem with it. And if it's done well and it's out and the fans love it, everything has a place in wrestling. Nothing worse than bad comedy wrestling, though. And so
It's true.
if it's done well and it's like I was happy to do whatever I did and never even thought about it, give it a second thought. It was just there, and I was happy to react to it with Danhausen recently because he's connected with his audience. Orange Cassidy's connected with their audience, and as long as you know how to, you got to be comfortable with yourself for one thing. Otherwise, their stuff won't work if you don't put it over. So that's a problem of being a comedy wrestler. If you get on with somebody who wants to think that they're too tough to sell their stuff, it's not going to work. You've got to have a comfortable person who's happy to put your stuff over. And I was always happy to do that with anybody. As long as they got that they could carry their bit of it. So, I mean, I was pulled into Mr. McMahon's office once and he said, "Can you work with Vito in a dress? Because I know you're the only person who can get this over." And I went, "Absolutely." So if you got, I'm the one who's, I'm supposed to be this, whatever I'm supposed to be. I'm the one with me head up his dress. I'm the one that's falling over. I'm the one that's being the brunt of the drop. I'm quite happy to do that because I'm comfortable, because I can keep what I've learned to do, I can keep my credibility. And in a split second, I can go from getting laughed at to getting people extremely mad at me, or the believability of my skill set could get me through anything. So I was always happy to do that. But if you're not on, if a comedy wrestler isn't on with a talent that can do that, it's
brutal,
rough. It's reminded me of a story, because we might never get to tell this story again. So I wrestled Santino a lot, and I gave him a lot of ideas for certain things, because there was a lot of British comedy wrestlers, and there were some really good ones. And then I ended up, one of the people I wrestled a lot when I was a teenager, he had basically he'd wrestled all of these comedy wrestlers and took all their bits, their little things that worked, but he had a knack of turning it round where he was always the brunt. He took their ideas and he was always the brunt of the joke, which is a very different thing for most comedy wrestlers. A guy called Steve Peacock. And I wrestled him. I wrestled two people mostly for the first 18 months of my full-time career. And he sort of made a fool of himself, whereas most comedy wrestlers make a fool of the person they're on with. And so I learned a lot of stuff from being around him and being around a lot of other comedy wrestlers in Europe, and not just Britain, in Europe as well. And so I gave Santino a lot of stuff. Well, I used to put his stuff over. If I wrestled him, I'd put his stuff over, and I'd react to everything and make it funny. Well, one night it was actually an afternoon show. We were in Tucson, Arizona. Now, when comedy wrestling's going good, it's great. When it's not, ooh. And this particular afternoon, the people in Tucson just were not having. Didn't matter what we did, they just weren't having it, and it was just silence.
Oh no!
So I go to the thing that I know will always work, or mostly always work, and it did until this particular day. I know this is an old kind of a thing now, and it's probably not going to happen because it's a different day and age. But I know hard flesh on flesh gets reaction. So we've done stuff, we've tried some of his stuff, and it's just silent. The usual things where there's all laughs, there's no laughs. I don't know what had happened that day. It was like being in the chapel arrest. It was just total nothing. So I bend him over the rope, and I start forearm smashing him, and I am walloping it. I mean, it's like woof. I think
Right.
have I just knocked my microphone? There
No,
we
it's
go. I
good.
just knocked my own microphone out, hitting myself, but I'm walloping him like he's got. Oh, God. But usually that is enough to get people's attention. They,
Sure.
oh, and then I knew that I'd have a trick somewhere, or he'd have a trick where we could get them back. But the first 5 minutes, and it was only probably 5 minutes of the match, it was just nothing. So we had, we had liberty with the time. It was just try and get the right reaction, get the crowd going. It just wasn't. So I'm hammering him, wallop on the chest, wallop. That usually at least gets out. Ooh, if I can get a wince off people, I know where to take it. I've got 20 things I can do from there. As a trick, or not a trick, a thing that you learn as a wrestler. When things aren't going right, sometimes don't look at the crowd. A lot of times you do want to look at the crowd, but sometimes when things aren't going right, don't, because this can happen to you. I'm pounding the life out of him across the chest, and his chest just welted up, and his whole forearm. And I happened to catch the eye of a man on the third row, and I should have just kept and changed to something, but I didn't. And as I'm looking at this fella, he just looks up at me, and out loud he went, "I've paid $40 for this seat." I went, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to say. It just threw me right off my game. Like, he's just sat there and going, I'm sorry, pal. And we just sort of limped through the rest of the match. And we got out. We both went backstage. I'm like, oh, God. But his chest was just purple when I'd been smashing the life out. And that was it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of a funny question. I think it's kind of a funny question that you're being asked what you think about comedy wrestlers, because a lot of people who just know you from WWE have seen mostly that comedy side from you.
Yeah.